Welcome to the London Horror Movie Club. I'm horror writer Lauren Jane Barnett.
And I'm Chris Sapikowski, Lauren's older brother, and I've been watching horror movies since I was 8.
Join us as we talk about the wild, weird, and wonderful horror films set in England's eerie capital.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our October Halloween special where we've got an interview a week. This week, we have with us the amazing Allan Bryce. He is the legend behind The Dark Side, and if you don't know it, it's the standout magazine for horror fans in the UK and has been since 1990. He also spawned out of that the unrivaled horror con DarkFest. It takes place every November in London. It's a personal favorite of mine, of course, but also Hammer stars like Pauline Piet and Caroline Monroe. He's also an incredibly talented writer and editor, producing cult horror books like Die Laughing, The Dark Side Guide to Comedy Horror. And that isn't even going into his commentary on DVDs, his cameos in films, and the sci-fi enthusiast magazine Infinity. In other words, I should stop talking and let him do some. So welcome, Allan.
Hi, Lauren. My head's got so much bigger now since I did that introduction. Yeah. Does it fit in the screen okay? Yeah, I think.
It deserves it. So I know you've done so many incredible things, and I do want to get into stories of that. But really, you've seen, I think, every horror film ever made, or certainly more than most people. So I'm dying to know, what was the first or that memorable horror movie that made you go, oh, I really like horror movies?
Well, the weird thing is, growing up in the UK, I used to get magazines like Famous Monsters of Filmland and things like that. And I would see pictures from these films that I was not allowed to. I mean, you can't believe this, right? But back in the '60s when I was growing up, films like Frankenstein, the 1931 version, was an X certificate. So you had to be 16 to go and see it at the cinema, which is crazy, really. Even a film like Gorgo got an X, which is basically a kiddie dinosaur movie. So I couldn't. So it was kind of. I think maybe the interest, like me, and a lot of my people of my age were interested because they could pick up these magazines and see pictures from these films, like the portrait of Dorian Gray with that horror, the horrible picture after that was one of my favourites. And I thought I'd love to see that, but you weren't allowed to see it. So instead, you had to just get the magazines, read about these films, and then wait for the time when you were old enough to get in. And unfortunately for me, I always tended to look a lot younger than I was, and I had a lot of friends who were going to see X films before I was because they looked older, and that's it. So it's quid pro quo, really. I mean, I'm pleased now as I get older that I do maybe look a bit less than my age, but back then it was mortifying. I just could not get in to see these films. So to me, the first film I ever got in to see was a double bill of Frankenstein Created Woman and The Mummy Shroud in 1967. And that's my first double horror. And I think it was just because the cinema wasn't doing very well, so they just let people in anyway. So and the following week I tried to get in to see A Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood, and they wouldn't allow me into that. That was an X. So it was like hit and miss. You could get, sometimes you just were lucky, sometimes you weren't. But I do remember seeing Frankenstein Created Woman and The Mummy Shroud double bill, and I really enjoyed them. But I thought, well, they're not very scary, really. To be honest, they were a little bit mediocre. I thought they were okay. I liked them. So eventually I just found a whole bunch of cinemas around my way that I knew could always get into. They would always allow me in, so that was fun. Once you got in once, that's it. You're okay. And so, there was a place in Kingston which is nearby me called the Kingston Cinema. I used to go there a lot, and they had great double bills. They used to do like Monday to Wednesday, and then Thursday to Saturday or something. And they would have like Horrors of the Black Museum, Pit and the Pendulum, Circus of Horrors rather, and I don't know, one of the other Corman movies, Premature Burial or something, or double bills. And that's how I then started to discover those films. But I didn't find any of them particularly scary. But it was great to see them because by then I'd already seen the pictures from them in the magazines, and I knew, and I was like going, oh, I can tick that one off my list, And I think one of my favourites was There's a lot of scenes from a film called The Deadly Bees, which is an Amicus film made in the day today. And one weekend, I used to do a Friday paper round, and I used to look in the local paper to see what was playing locally. And we were opening up, and it was like Deadly Bees and Theatre of Death double bill at Reigate, just down the road, cycle ride down the road. And I was thinking, oh my God, I do desperately want to see that. And so even now, okay, now I look back on these films, it's like when because the intriguing thing for me about horror films is that it depends on what age you are when you see them. That it's the same with music, isn't it? The music you love, sometimes, if you heard that music when you were 14 or 15 years of age, that really is maybe your favorite music as you grow up. And I think, to me, the same thing. A lot of the films I saw back in the late 60s are still my favorites because they're kind of like, when I revisit them, even at my advanced age, I just think, I love, it just kind of takes you back a little bit, and I enjoy them. So it may not be that you could say they're the greatest films you've ever seen, but they are films that you saw back then, and you will, and it kind of, if you need a bit of a comfort blanket as life deals you a few problems, then it's not a bad thing to go back to stuff that you loved when you were that age. That's what I think.
That's interesting you say that, because Nightmare on Elm Street is my all-time favorite horror movie. It was like the first horror movie that I watched. It was a babysitter that was in our neighborhood that let us watch it, when our parents were away. What would you recommend? I don't watch a lot of the older horror movies, 60s, 70s style. What would you recommend for someone like me who, I mean, I like all horror and I have watched some of those, but I've not seen The Mummy Shroud and I have not seen some of the other movies that you mentioned. What would be one that you'd recommend?
Well, I think it's like, I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street is very good. I remember back in the day, I interviewed Robert Englund so many times. Every time he came over, I used to get together with him. He was so great, and he was such a nice man. But and that was like every decade has its iconic film. So Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play is an iconic movie for me. Fright Night, some of those movies. There, you can pick them out, from every decade, and it's like as you go forward. My daughter Amber, she loves modern day horror films, so she likes things like Hereditary and The Babadook and things like that. But these are films that, so they will stand out from the crowd. There are. Yeah. So if you go back to back to the 60s, Night of the Living Dead, definitely. I mean, when I first saw that I think everyone should watch that and Dawn of the Dead as well, and Day of the Dead. I guess the first three of those are certainly classics that you'd recommend everyone to watch. And if you were to talk about the ones that people have to see, they would include The Exorcist, obviously, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Haunting, the original Haunting by Robert Wise, and also Night of the Demon, which is the first film we showed at our festival, which is absolutely, a real classic film. You can't really, So if you had to sort of say to somebody, look, I've never seen a horror film before, these are the kind of films you have to recommend to them. But sometimes, and I think one of the things I think it may be a bit sad actually today is that back in the day, when I was first writing about films and all that, I'm reviewing them, it'd be nice for a critic to be able to say, you see this film because it's really good and nobody else knows about it. But now that you don't get that, because now you've got this IMDb, everything's swamped with it, everyone's saying it's wonderful, it's marvelous, etc. And so you can't really point out films to people that maybe they might have missed. The other night we sat down to watch a film called Anguish, which is a Spanish movie made some time ago. And Yanni had never seen it, and Amber had never seen it. And it's a really good little movie set in a cinema. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I just found it in my collection. And Amber was saying to me, "Have you got a horror film I might not have heard of?" And I said, "Yeah, this is good. This is a good movie." But not everything is available to download, and that's the weird thing where we are now. Is that sometimes you can can think, oh, I'd love to see that film again, and then if you haven't got the physical media side of it, then you can't find it to download. And that's true of a lot of really old classic movies that you might want to see, but you suddenly realise that if you haven't, it's not on Amazon, it's not on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever it is, and you can't find it because they tend to be those channels tend to be skewed more towards modern day movies rather than the old ones. So that's why I'm still a fan of collecting, physical media, definitely.
God, I'm the same way actually. So you mentioned really briefly, obviously you started out doing interviews before you did the dark side and reviews. Did you like hop into that very naturally, or what was the story behind getting you behind the movies?
Well, I think most people know that I didn't start it. I mean, I had left school with no qualifications, and so I worked at Waitrose for a long time, 20 years actually. And but in the middle of that, I started writing for magazines and things, and I started to make a lot of money and do very well at it. So I started out originally just writing reviews and things, and then I started thinking, I could do features on stuff because I knew lots of things, and then I became, really. I mean, I just started making so much money, I had to give up my other job because I was making more for writing than I was stacking shelves at Waitrose. So I had to do that, and so that was it. But I remember that I'd never done an interview before, but this company said to me, or one of my magazines said to me, do you want to go and interview Fred Williamson and Robert Ginty? And Exterminator guy Robert Ginty and Fred Williamson, famous black exploitation guy, they made a film called White Fire. So I went to interview them, and I loved it. I chatted to them, and I got on very well because I'm quite a chatty person anyway. So I just go along and talk to them. And I remember I got an interview with Walter Hill, who was one of my big heroes, and I did that for a listings mag called City Limits, and I went to see the film editor, and he said to me, "What are you ask him?" And I said, "Don't know. I know about his films." And he said, "Ask him how he can make films like The Great Waldo Pepper and then do this violent stuff." And I said, "That Great Waldo Pepper is George Royhill." And I said to him, "Are you the film editor?" So I kind of realised then that maybe even me working at Waitrose, but really a film person, knew maybe more than a lot of people did about that. And also, then suddenly I remember, going to do. I was involved in doing stuff for Penthouse magazine, and I interviewed Sylvia Christel for them, and I did. It was great fun. I went to lunch with Sylvia Christel. I mean, I should have paid them, and I had a great time. Got a great interview out of her, and when I handed it in, they paid me like £500. And you've got to bear in mind this was like back in like 1983 or something like that. £500, and it was probably more than I earned in Waitrose in a month. And I thought I'm silly not to do this full time. But it also was great for me to meet people I loved. I don't know, people I admired, like Adam West, Batman. He came over and I did the great thing with him. There's a funny story about that actually. He said to me, what happened was back in the 80s, there was a strike about, they had TVAM or Good Morning Britain, the early morning TV show. So they started showing Batman episodes instead of having people, and then it became so popular and got higher ratings than the actual normal telly. So they got him over, got Adam West over, and they got him over to do interviews, and he was great. I interviewed him because they re-released the old Batman film, the '60s one. The one where the shark's biting on him, where he's famous one. Anyway, so I went to lunch with him. He wanted to go to his favourite restaurant, which is in Covent Garden, and we went there. And I ordered the starter, and it was like full of garlic. And at the time, I don't mind now, but I couldn't eat garlic. And I was going, no. And he goes, "You don't like that, do you?" And I said, "No, not really." And he goes, "I recommend the steak tartare." So right. So bear in mind, I'm a guy who comes from an all background. I have no idea what steak tartare is at all. So it comes out, and I think, well, this is good. They show it to you before they cook it, and then they just put it down. And I went, and he went, "Oh, that looks good. I wish I'd ordered that." And I went, "Oh yeah, okay." And I'm gingerly, I think you've had steak tartare anyway, is raw steak basically. So I just gingerly ate some of it, and I'm thinking, "Oh my god, am I going to eat it?" Because he was like looking at me, I was like, "Good, yeah, it's really good, it's really good." So it was really funny. And also at the end of it, I remember all these waitresses were going, "Who is that guy? Who is that guy?" They were asking me on the way out. I said, "That's Batman. That's Batman." They were like going mad, because he was on the telly and everything like that. But I just met. It was just fun to meet people like him, and you got awkward interviews. I remember funniest one was Michael Mann. Michael Mann, who's the director of Heat and all that sort of stuff. And when I got there, they said, "Oh, he's PR girl said, oh, he's a nightmare. He's a nightmare. He's." And so I said to him, first thing I said to him was, I said it was to do with the series he was doing, I think called Crime Story, and it was and I said to him, "You must be pleased then." And he went, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I hear they've sold like 12,000 units of Crime Story," because I had mates in the business, And he went, 12,000 units? How do you know that? And then I said to him, "Well, I just know people." And he started, anyway, he said to me, come to lunch. And we got on so because he was just interested in, he goes, "How do you know all this?" And the next day his people phoned me up and said, "Michael, I had a great time with you. Can you give us more information on these sales figures?" I think probably New Line had been trying to rip him off or something like that, and he just thought it was funny. But I just love meeting people, and the one my kids love, right? The one my kids love is that back in the day, I had this girl called Judy. She was a really good friend of mine. She used to work for Warner Brothers, and she went to do PR for Sky B, which is like Sky, what they were called back in the day before they became Sky. And she phoned me up and she goes to me, "Can you do an interview with this guy you've got coming over, Johnny Depp?" And I said to him, "I've never heard of him," because I hadn't heard of him. And she said he's starring in a series he bought called 21 Jump Street. And I phoned all my people and I said, "Can you do an interview with Johnny Depp?" And they said, "No, never heard of him." And nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted it. So I phoned her. I said, "Can't do it, sorry, because I can't sell it." And she goes to me, "If you do it anyway, we'll pay £200 for it, and we'll just try and get it in local papers." So I met him in Wardour Street, and it turned out he was like a big horror fan. We spent about 4 hours doing it on a pub crawl. And Mike, he was 21 though. He was just like 21, that's how long ago it was. He was about 21 years old. Nobody had heard of it. And the weirdest thing, and I've often said to people, the week before that, I'd interviewed an actor called Clayton Forno, who I thought was a really, really good actor, right? He was starred in something, I can't remember his Thriller. And I thought he was going to go far because he was brilliant in this film that he was in. And that, I thought, and I just remember writing it up and saying, "This guy's going to go far." I didn't say that about Johnny Depp, but I did say about the other guy. And I think about a year ago, I looked up Clayton Forno because I thought, what happened to him, And it turns out he was in Ozark, which I love. So he had a big part in Ozark. So, he did go somewhere, but he didn't go to the same lengths as... So you don't know, Jim. Right. You just don't know. It's like and my girls go... I remember one of my girls goes to me, "So do you keep in touch with Johnny Depp?" "No, not really." I don't phone him up. "Johnny, how are you doing tonight?" No, not really. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's just like...
That's amazing, though.
That's people who are, and another one that kind of comes on the cusp of that, right? So I interviewed Eric Roberts for a film he made called The Coca-Cola Kid, and he said to all of us, we were in the pub, and I think Eric was he was not into Coca-Cola. He might have been some kind of Coke, but he was not into Coca-Cola back in the day. I'm not sure what he's like now, but anyway, we thought, "Oh no, he's a bit unreliable," and but he said, "Do you want to meet my sister? She's got a new film coming out, Mystic Pizza." And we said, "No, not really." And we said, no. So that's a missed opportunity, really.
That's funny. Now, if you were in the pub with Julia Roberts and she said, "Do you want to meet my brother?" everybody would be like, "No, not really."
Absolutely, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You know what? It's like you don't know, do you? I mean, it's like, and also there's degrees of famous, isn't there? I mean, I met when I was working at Waitrose, right? This girl who was working on the checkouts, she said to me, "Is it true you interview famous people?" And I said, "I have interviewed famous people, yeah." And she goes to me, "Who have you interviewed as famous recently?" And I said, and the week before I'd interviewed Charlton Heston, because he was in some TV movie that they were flogging in the UK. I can't remember what it's called now. Anyway, and he was delightful, absolute gentleman. And she goes to me, no, don't know him. She goes, have you interviewed anyone from EastEnders? And that's kind of the world we live in today. If you go out and the people who are well known, who are in soaps and things, they're celebrities. Yanni and I do. I mean, look, we watch Celebrity MasterChef and all that sort of thing, and Strictly Come Dancing and all that sort of rubbish. And they come on and they go, "Who's that? What have they been in? Who's that? Who's that? I've never seen them." Whoever's in it is probably desperate for a bit of exposure because they've not. So it is. It's a different world really that we live in today with celebrities anyway, but it's nice to know, like I say, when you meet people and interview them, and you either, sometimes you just feel that contact with them, sometimes you don't, but it's just, it's I mean, I'm dying to interview Tony Marden, who's the director of Witches of the Sands, but he doesn't return my calls because I don't know what's going on. Anyway, yeah, carry on. Yeah.
Well, I've heard it's his girlfriend. She's a real pain in the ass.
I know. I've heard that. Yeah.
Okay, so I gotta ask then. And sorry, Chris, did you have one first?
No, go ahead. I'm staying out of that one.
I gotta ask then. So obviously you love doing interviews, but then it's a huge jump to then do a magazine where you've got to have everything, stories and interviews. And what made you want to do it all, basically?
Well, it really kind of coincided with. I gave up working for Waitrose in 1993 when I was made editor of Darkside. I'd been the editor of Darkside for a few years by then. I never thought I was necessarily going to be a great editor. I like writing, but I just, I didn't know I can spell and I can punctuate, but I'm not necessarily saying I'm better than anyone else on that. But anyway, my sort of mentor was this guy called Chris Adam Smith, who created the Darkside. And so when I gave up my Waitrose job, I became the editor of the Darkside, and he was like the managing editor, Chris, and he created the title and everything like that. And so I was just a guy for hire. But a year on, when the company that produced it folded, I bought it in conjunction with the guy who used to do the repro work on it. In other words, he created the film to make the magazine. So I then started to learn how to put magazines together. But things have changed an awful lot. So in those old days, it was a complicated process doing a magazine. So, for example, every writer would send in their work as typed stuff. So you get pages and pages of type, and then I'd have to go through and mark any changes I wanted, where I wanted things, and I have to tell them what typeface I wanted it in, send it down there. They would type it up again, send it back in rows of 3 or rows of 4 or whatever, and then my designer would slice it up and paste it down on a page. It was really complicated. It took a long time, and also it was more expensive to have some color pages than black and white pages. So you'd have to go right. I can have pages 1, 3, 7, and 9 can be color, whatever, how it fell in the scheme of how they printed the pages out. So it was quite complicated. For years and years and years, I did it in partnership with this guy Ken, but sadly when he passed on, that's when I decided I would buy the mag and we'd do it ourselves. But by that time, we'd moved on to an era of design programs, computers, and everything like that. So it was much, much more simple. So not that complicated to do. I mean, the basic thing that happens with doing a magazine is like doing a book or anything, or even doing a film or anything like that. Best way to approach anything like that is to map it out beforehand, draw it out, or whatever you want to do. I mean, we do a flat plan, as we call it. So the flat plan would be 68 pages for Darkside, front cover, and then I just fill it in with what I want in each one, and then my designer Kevin will just go ahead and design it as to what the specs we are. So it's not that complicated. It really isn't. But it was back in the day. It took a lot more time. But now you can do it. I mean, I don't know whether I could do the amount I do now if I went back in time 25 years or something, because it took a lot longer to get everything, because you had this sort of back and forth in the post to get everything. You didn't have internet or anything like that. So now a lot of people can do stuff, and let's face it, a lot of people now, a lot of my friends, do books and things which are printed by Amazon. So they're not. We don't do that, but it's a valid way of doing things. If you want to do something and not lose a lot of money with what you're doing, then you sell stuff and then they print them as they go. I personally don't like the quality of the printing for Amazon books myself, but I'd rather have a book that. Well, I mean, let's face it, Lauren, you've done books, and it's the same thing. You have to make a decision. Do I go out and take a punt, go to the races with this and just basically print so many thousand copies? But that's what we do. We print. We've got two new books coming out, and this year, and we're printing a couple of thousand of each, and we just expect that we'll get enough pre-orders to pay the bills, which we usually do. So after a while, people know it's going to be a good quality product. So, and that's the key thing in the end. I mean, if you're doing something, I say a weird thing I find about the Amazon books is you can always tell them, because they always have these like white pages at the beginning. Have you noticed that? You open them up and you think there's 3 or 4 white pages. Well, that's a bit of a waste, isn't it? That's because maybe they either it's something to do with the printing process they use, or it's something to do with the fact that maybe the people who are doing it haven't counted the pages up properly to get within the Amazon parameters. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. But I mean, doing a mag certainly is. I mean, we do 2 mags every month. So and not only that, I do the Southern Royal magazine as well with Kevin. So that's another thing. But that's by the by. But I just like to keep busy.
Do you have plans for if I asked you what do you see yourself or the company or all your projects? Do you have multiple projects 5 years out that you're thinking about now, or do you just take things as they come? Like, this would be interesting. Let's go full force.
We every year. I mean, it's fairly. Our year's work is fairly predictable. So we do the magazines, obviously, and we also do a book a year. But we're doing 2 books this year. Probably doing 2 books next year. So, for example, I'm working on a fun project, which is basically in my editorials, I tend to write about old stuff that happened to me. And because I kind of like just go revisiting my diaries and things. So I've got my 1968 diary, which is schoolboy diary, and I've been turning it into a book. So for example, every day we have 200 or 300 words for every day, and we should make a big book, quite a big book anyway. And it's fun because I read it and I think, oh, this stuff I did back in 1968 was a big year for me. It was like 14, 15. And so I just think, like we were talking about formative years. So that's my planned book for next year. But we also have another book on George Romero coming along, which I think is going to be very good. We've got that already. That needs to be done as well. So we'll probably do 2 books next year. And we do. Obviously, we have our festival, our DarkFest, which comes every November. We have in the magazine called Infinity, so we might do a festival for that next year with some Doctor Who people and things like that, which I think would be fun, just like TV people and things like that. So we do like to do stuff, and I think, bearing in mind that we are a cottage industry, so it's just Yanni and me. We just do this stuff from home, so we, as long as I've got the enthusiasm for it, and and I'll suddenly think, oh, let's do this, let's do that, and there are lots of things that we would love to do that we haven't done yet. But I think basically the thing I always feel about doing magazines, it's a bit like if I was running a restaurant, right? I would be thinking, every night people come in, they've got to have good food and good service. So you only need to screw it up once or twice, and it's very costly to you as a business. So the most important thing is trying to make sure that every magazine we do and book we do is really worth the money and really worthwhile. Because the moment you start dropping the ball a bit, that's when, or maybe I mean, even in the old days when my partner Ken was doing the magazine, sometimes he would start cutting costs by making, because he didn't sell enough advertising, he would start making some of the pages, more pages black and white, and the cover not so glossy or something like that. And I said to him, you can't do that, and we never do that. Even if we ourselves were dropping a little bit, we would make sure we kept it up, because otherwise, and that is the key thing. I think whatever you do, you've got to just make sure that you do it to the best of your ability. That's all, And horror magazines are a tough market these days, because you look. I mean, how many of them are out there? You have America's obviously not as big a market for horror magazines as it used to be. I think Britain's a bigger market for horror magazines than USA. I really do think so, which sounds weird, but you look at what they do over there. They do Fangoria like 4 times a year. We do 12 mags a year. They do, I don't know, their magazines don't come out that frequently, and lots of them are folding. Film Facts and people like that just folding, And whereas we over here, and look at their books, the books are very, very poorly produced over there compared to what we produce. And I understand it, and it's really because the American market is very tough to crack. If we don't have to worry about, we produce thousands of books and we'll sell them in the UK. But imagine if we were in America and we did thousands of books, we probably wouldn't sell them. Where are we going to sell them? Barnes and Noble might have some, but bottom line is it's a tougher market, because it's very, and a lot of really good publications over there have gone to the wall, like Video Watchdog and things like that, which they're great magazines, but they've just, people do not support them, because they go online. So our market in America is reasonable, but it's not. It's like gravy on top of what we make in the UK. That's it. It's not. We don't rely on it. That's it. And it's nice to know we've got a lot of good American readers and things. But it is. I'm glad we are doing, because if I was in America, I don't think I'd be doing a magazine like this, just because I don't think it would survive.
It'd be a push to online. Is that what we were saying about the other ones?
I think the online side of things is, because a lot of people say, oh yeah, you must do well online. Well, we do okay online, obviously, but because a magazine's $12 in America or something, which is not cheap. It's £5 over here. It's $12. It's a lot of money, but and it costs a fortune to post to America, so we have to charge people a lot for it. So, but having said that, a lot of people still just prefer. I think we talk about people who like physical media. I think a lot of people do just like to have a book, a proper book. I mean, it's just so nice to actually have that. Stick a book in your bookcase, or put a magazine in your folder and your binder. We sell binders and things. And there are so many people who just would rather have that. And it's strange, because sometimes you find people will buy a digital copy and then they'll follow it up by buying a physical copy, because they look at it and go, oh, I'd like to have this as a physical. And I understand that. I would rather have a physical copy of anything, because yes, it's online, you can read it, but it's at least the digital side of things is an adjunct to what our main business, but our print business is the main business. Yeah.
I mean, you've done the dark side for like 35 years now. Do you have any magazines that you're really glad you saved, where you're like, that I was so proud of that, or that you go back to and go like, oh, we did a great one this time?
It's what is so most strange. I've got all these magazines down. You've been around, so it's like I've got these magazines stashed away, and the weirdest thing is I can't remember a lot of the time what we have done and what we haven't done. I'm a big film music fan, right? And my big idol was Jerry Goldsmith, the composer. And I met Jerry when he was scoring Alien over here in '79. And I was talking to him, and he has this conductor guy, Arthur Morton, with him. And I said, got any favourites then, Jerry, of your scores? And he was going, I can't remember what I've done. And I was going, you must remember. Oh yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one. But it's like certain issues that we've done going back. If I was to go down there and I was to go seeking through, sometimes we did 100-page issue 200 or something, which was great, and we sold it for $3.99, and that was just like for a treat for the readers, and that was a really good one. And I put everything into that one. So that's a classic one, but sold out long ago, obviously. Previous ones, I don't know. I mean, when we started doing it ourselves, I got to a stage when I was just getting the design right and everything, and I thought this is looking nice now. But we've done so much and so many things over the years. I'm surprised. There's an index actually you can go up to on our website, and it tells you everything. Some guy sent it in. It's like 210 issues logged. Whatever's in, and whatever. And so sometimes I use that if I think, have we ever done an interview with such and such a person? And I'm amazed how many people we have actually done interviews with who are like so obscure. So when you've done like 258, 200, nearly 260 issues, it's very difficult to say that's my favorite. But I just know that sometimes I can look back and leaf through old issues and be quite surprised how great they are compared to, I just like thinking, what, this is really good. We've been doing this for so long. I've forgotten that we've done this, forgotten we've done this. And my designer Kevin has only been designing it since we came back issue 145 or something. I can't remember like that. And but he's very, very good, and he makes the most of the look of it, and so that's the thing. And he also keeps me he guides me very well, because sometimes he'll say, you've got one feature too many in this issue, because if I put it in, then the other issue is going to suffer, because visually they're not going to be as good. So quite often I'll go, okay, take that one, I'll put it on next time round. So because he's right. And it's the same with our books. There has to be that balance between the text and the images, because you've got to have, people buy it, basically they'll leaf through. If you've got a really striking, he likes to open with a really striking image of a spread or something like that, and if he has to squeeze it up and he can't do that, he'll often complain. So so it's a good relationship we got, design and text.
That's great. What are you looking forward to coming up? Like, I know you got your book, the diary that you've done from '68. You got you said Romero book that's coming out. What else are you looking forward to?
Right. Okay. So our big thing this year is we have films of John Carpenter, which is in design now. That's a really good book, coming out in November. So we've got Carpenter's book is really, really proving popular. I mean, then he would do, because he's a popular guy. And it's full of interviews with him and stuff like that. And the zombie book is fun. And so they'll be done ready. We have a festival in November in Whitechapel. And we have a lot of good guests going to that. So we always have our Hammer ladies who always go no matter what. So there's like Martine Beswick, Madeline Smith, Caroline Monroe, Pauline Peart. They are our Hammer regulars. They will always go. It's like a big party for them every year. And we've also got Adriene King coming over from Friday the 13th. So we're going to screen that. Belinda Main, who's in Don't Open Until Christmas, and she's actually the daughter of Ferdy Main, who starred in Fearless Vampire Killers. He was the vampire in that, which is good. And we've got Susan Penhaligon, who in House of Mortal Sin, but she's quite a well-known actress in the UK. Got Lindsay Drew, my old friend Lindsay, coming over. She was Brenda Bristol's in American Werewolf in London. So she'll be there.
Everybody remembers See You Next Tuesday.
She is so funny, and so we got a whole batch of people coming along, and we got Cynthia Monreale, who's in The Beyond. She's a blind girl in The Beyond. And I think also I've been speaking to Francesca Ciardi. I don't know if you know her, but she's really fun, and she'd love to come over if we can fit her in. She's in Cannibal Holocaust. She stars in Cannibal Holocaust. One of the main female that. So she's happy to come over. I met her years ago, but so she'd be happy. So it's just really a fun gathering of people, and we show all these movies. And you spend it. Well, I'd say Tony and Lauren, you met there, didn't you? I think
we did. It's my favorite festival for that reason. Tony and I go every year, and it's like an anniversary.
I know. So it's great. And we'll probably be showing maybe a little clip from Witches of the Sands. I suspect. In advance of its 2030 release.
Don't hold him to that.
But you know, look, really, to be honest, whatever we showed, people would come along because it's just a really good social event. It's like a gathering of mates, and you can just, you know, have a chin wag and, you know, hang out at the bar, meet some celebrities and things like that. And a lot of people are coming along aren't going to charge for autographs. Anyway, we got for example, Eileen Daly, we're showing her Razorblade Smile, and she goes to me, "I'll just come and sign people's autographs for free." And I said, you know, you don't need to do that, Eileen. She goes, "No, I'm happy to do that." She was doing that last year as well. And the same with Linda Marlowe, who's a big zapper, as we call her. She'll be a lot. So there's a lot of people who'd be there just part of the crowd, but meeting people, and it's kind of like a fun thing. And also, you know, good thing is the area where we are, Whitechapel, you can go out and you can go to, there's a pub called the Blind Beggar. I don't know if you must have been there. And it's if you look it up on your gangland history, look up the Cray Twins and the Blind Beggar and see what happens.
He is obsessed with the Cray Twins.
Yeah, I've already, when you said Blind Beggar, I was like, I knew exactly what that was already.
Oh, there we go. So you know what I'm talking about. So people go out there and go to the Blind Beggar, and it's part of the scene. It's part of the whole rich tapestry of the area, and we have a great time. You know, we go out beforehand on. Tony and Lauren might be joining us. Hopefully, we always go out for a curry the night before at Brick Lane, and you know, with our guests and stuff. It's kind of like a big social thing, you know. And we do well out of it, you know. Financially, we do well out of it. We sold over half of our £200. I think 400 is about the maximum we can get in there. We sold about 200 of them already, just over 200. We've only been selling a week, and it's not until November, so we know we'll be okay. But I think everyone's sold more because people come and they have a great time, and they just go, "Oh, we must go to that next year," and they put it in their diary. And it's, you know, we have Horror Fest in London. We were at this Fright Fest. You didn't go to Fright Fest, did you, Lauren?
No, we were filming.
Yeah, so the Fright Fest in London is very popular, and so that's big, that's massive. That's all sponsored. I mean, this is our little thing, you know. It's not really, we don't get any sponsorship. We just pay for it ourselves, and it costs us a lot to rent the cinema because it's a really good cinema. But it's you know, and it's nice, and I do like to see and support other people doing the same thing as well. You know, lots of other little events going on. A friend of mine, Marcus, he does a thing called Weekend of the Dead, which is based around George Romero stuff in Manchester.
And you know what? In September or August.
And he's a really good friend. He and Tracy, his wife Tracy, are really good friends of ours, and they are lovely people. And you know, they you know, they sometimes, you know, they spend more money than we do getting their guests over, so they kind of have to struggle sometimes to do it. So, but they do it because of the love of it, you know, and they really deserve support, those people who do that, you know, because they really do. I mean, with us, if I was losing money, Yanni would just say to me, "Right, that's no more of those." So that'd be the end of it. Whereas Marcus, you know, he and Tracy have to sort of have arguments about it. But you know, I love doing the DarkFest, and they are good fun. And I'm really looking forward to it because it's kind of nice. It's like about a month before Christmas, and then you've got all that Christmas stuff coming up. So that's good. Love it.
Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Well, I'm just curious, with everything that you're doing, the people you've interviewed, the fun that you have with DarkFest, do you think that if you went back and told your 15-year-old self that this is what you're doing now, that you'd even be able to comprehend that you were doing this? I mean, do you feel like you're living the dream at some level?
Well, I do, and I think the weird thing is, back in the day when I was 15, I used to go to this thing called the Gothic Film Society, and that was it was in London, and they showed old black and white movies. And it's where I saw things like The Old Dark House for the first time. And the presidents were a guy called Bob Monkhouse, who was a comedian, Christopher Lee, and Terence Fisher, were the people who were like the figureheads of this thing. So occasionally you see Terence Fisher there, occasionally, and I just remember going there and thinking, "Oh my God, that's Christopher Lee," you know, or what have you, and Terence Fisher. And but I felt that's not my world. You know, I'm just there just as a fan to look up to them. And So yeah, I never really thought that. I mean, I'd love to. If I'd known, I would have been delighted. But no, I never really thought I was ever actually going to be involved in any of this. And it's like my daughter, she's just gone off to the Venice Film Festival because she's a successful journalist, and she was at the Fright Fest the other day, and she went to get a copy of Alan Jones's book on Starburst film reviews. And I said, "Say hi to Alan for me." And she said, because Alan, I've known Alan for donkey's years, and also signing was Mark Kermode, the film critic, who's quite well known in the UK. So I said, "Say hi to Mark from me," and she said, "Do you know what he said to me? Oh my God, your dad kept us all in business back in the day. We wouldn't have survived without him." Which is true. I gave him there, but he's now super famous. So now I got my estimations. My daughter's, in my daughter's estimation, I've gone up to there now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Actually,
that's the biggest win of all of them.
Somebody famous, and they actually know who you are. But yeah, I think it's. But on the other hand, it's like, I mean, what is being famous? Like I said to you about meeting Johnny Depp and all that. I mean, you're famous one day, you're not famous the next. It's just like you've got to carry on doing stuff. I mean, in my own little world, I'm quite famous, but hardly really super famous. But in the end of the day, I'm just doing stuff that I like doing, and the fact that you enjoy that is crucial, and because we all want. I mean, we all got to make a living, so everyone's got to have money coming in and do what they do. And I've had times where it's been tough for me as well. And Yanni, my other half, she's great, but she's not a horror fan. If everyone that comes up to her at the festivals and asks her about what's your favourite Hammer film or not, she's got no answer for them because she doesn't even know what Hammer film is probably. So it's not really like having somebody who's a big horror buff. And I've never had a girlfriend who's really been a big time horror person. It's always been mine. And I think when you're younger, it's different now than when I was growing up because you didn't have the internet. But back in the day, you didn't have loads of social media friends who you might talk to, but you don't know what they're like, and so you had to. Your friends were your friends, and none of my friends were horror fans. None of my, you didn't congregate in like a big fan club of people. If I was I was obsessive about Jerry Goldsmith, for example, but I knew nobody else in my who'd ever heard of him, and they go, "What did he do? What did he do?" And I go, "Like Man from Uncle theme," and they go, So it's like I think you heard his music, but you don't know who he is, And nowadays, you say like he did Star Trek thing, of course, motion picture, and the Waltons and things like that. Yeah, but lots of and the Alien and the Omen and stuff like that. But certainly nowadays, things have turned on their head because back in the day, they never even reviewed the little horror films like the Hammer ones, like Devil Rides Out. When they came out, they were because all the papers reviewed all the arty-farty foreign films and the big blockbuster releases. They just ignored that's why when I used to go along, I used to sit and write my little reviews in my school notebook when I was watching the film, which was what really got me going, I suppose, in the first place.
So I have to ask, because you also do Infinity Magazine as well as Dark Side. You're obviously a sci-fi fan. I'm a huge sci-fi fan as well. Do you have a favorite horror sci-fi crossover? And Alien, I know everyone loves. Do you have another one?
You know what? It's funny. I really quite like Event Horizon. I know it's not really got much respect. I remember thinking it's really quite scary, and also the effects were really good. I know it's apparently it's supposed to be a really it's all lost now, but they shot a lot more stuff which is horrific, which was never kept or something. But anyway, no, I do like that, even though the director's not one of the great filmmakers, Paul W.S. Anderson. But I also like. I mean, look, I don't know if you can see this, but like behind me, The Earth Dies Screaming. It's Terence Fisher film. It's filmed just down the road from where I live. We go there for pub lunches quite a lot. The same pub that was used in this film, and like an hour long. But I like it because it's like this whole thing about the British sci-fi horror films are usually set entirely in pubs. In other words, almost like Shaun of the Dead, where they just go to the pub. There seems to be a thing, right? Let's go to the pub and work it out. So you've got Devil Girl from Mars, for example. You've got Night of the Big Heat, you know. Then we'll just they go. Let's go to the pub and work out what we can do, you know. And that's one of those films set in a pub, and I don't mind, you know. I like it. It's kind of cozy, you know. It's a British way of dealing with stuff, you know. Yeah, sci-fi. I'm a big fan of sci-fi. You know, when I started Infinity, I originally thought it's going to be a mag about sci-fi, but then I suddenly thought, you know what? Why don't we do like cult TV as well? Because cult TV is great, and there's nothing around for that. So that I think is our secret weapon in what we do with Infinity. And it does very well. In fact, it's outselling Darkside now, which is good and bad. I don't know. But anyway, no, but it is selling really well, and I think when we do certain things, James Bond stuff seems to go down really well with our readers for some reason. And you know, and there's always a Bond anniversary, isn't there? So like, last year, like there was From Russia with Love, then there's Goldfinger, then there's Thunderball next year. Yeah, and you know, it just there's always one Bond a year almost that you can go in with. And interesting stories about this as well. And we've got a great thing coming up about how there was when they did Thunderball, and then it eventually became like Never Say Never Again, you know, with the remake. But there was a screenplay called Warhead, which was way better than the one they used for Never Say Never Again, and for some reason it never got used. So we got this sort of details of the screenplay, and it's a way better film. It's a shame it never got used. I don't know why, but I kind of like that stuff that's really obscure, and things that we used to like as kids. For example, look, my kids, I dropped my girls off in Croydon yesterday, and they said, "Can you drop us off in that road we used to go up with the Pokemon shop in it?" And I said, because they used to collect Pokemon cards, and that's my thing. My kids are brought up in the 90s, so they're Pokemon, Beanie Babies. Oh, yeah. Stuff. So every generation has its own thing that I used to collect, and it's something. It's really. Certainly back in my day, we did a big thing about when we used to give away free gifts with comics and all that. Like a little gun. You had a gun with a comic, free gun. Imagine that. And but also we did a nice feature about things like X-ray specs and sea monkeys, you know what I mean? And things, the guy who created all that, it was apparently a Nazi, which is really funny. If you look him up, you look at his background. So there's intriguing. I just think there's intriguing stuff. When people tell me, you know what, we should do something on this, I go, yeah, that would be great. And old TV shows that sometimes people haven't particularly heard of, and stars of them. I mean, obviously the ones that are popular, we got Sapphire and Steel and they're just those shows are always popular for us to bring round again. And people often write in and say, can you do something on this, for example? Some just say, can you do something on The Walking Dead? But I've just done a huge chapter on it for our zombie book, so that's enough of that for me. There's like 11 seasons of that I had to go through. So, but there are. I just think sometimes people go, I remember a series I saw when I was growing up, and it was so good, but I can't remember what it's called. It was about this, that, and the other. And people always, our readers will always know what it is. They'll go, yeah, that's that, and then they go, can we do a feature on it? Another one popular is Robinson Crusoe, because people love the music. The only thing that's got the best music of any old TV series. So we might do that again. But I mean, there are just so many, and and they're not generally covered in. We've done huge things on The Prisoner, Avengers TV series, obviously the classic one, Danger Man, Patrick McGowan. And they're just. We've got an interview next issue, I think, with the son is a musician called Guy Pratt, and his dad was Randall Hopkirk, deceased. Was the not non-deceased version of Randall Hopkirk, and he's a famous musician. This guy now. He gives a good interview about his dad. That's another popular show. All those ITC shows like Persuaders and all that that were fun to watch back in the day, and that gives us a wide variety. So we can actually do classic sci-fi, obviously, which we do. But it also means and also some of my American writers are really good. There's a guy called Greg Coulon who I think he works for NASA or something. His proper job, he seems to. I look at his Facebook, and he just suggested a piece on. Well, he sent me 2 pieces recently. One was on, and you may have never heard this. One was a great film called Colossus: The Forbidden Project, which is about a computer taking over the world. That is a great film. It's really good for today's age. Stars a guy called Eric Braeden, who's still working now. He was in the Rat Patrol years ago, but he's now still working in some soap. He must be about 90 or something. And another one called Skullduggery with Burt Reynolds. About you should look that one up because that is a classic. And and you think, well, okay, it kind of proves we're not really interested in necessarily going for stuff that's going to make people grab the mag off the shelves, but it also means that it shows our statement of intent that we are more than just about here's the new Star Wars film, because that is not what we're about, and therefore, I mean, because otherwise, you get things like the Doctor Who magazine sells a lot of copies while Doctor Who's on, not so many when it's not on. Yeah. But they pay a license fee and that, so that's that. And so, and even Empire and things like the film magazine, which really, if they will sell their cover maybe to whatever the latest blockbuster is. Well, we don't do that. We have been asked to do it. We've been told, oh, if you do this on the cover, we'll take an ad and all that. But we don't do it because I just think we are what we are. It's not that we're not desperate for. And obviously, the money would help. We're not offering a huge amount anyway. So we just think, that we would rather have, we'd rather do what we want to do and make something that's a little bit culty, a little bit eccentric, and all that, and also really good to read. That's the main thing, because then you learn something about. Otherwise, you just get these rather pointless interviews. And we often offered interviews with people regarding new films, and they're just going to say, "Oh, it was great to work with this person. It was fantastic." And then you go, "Oh, no, really?" We'd rather get something that's more interesting for people to read, and actually they will learn something as well, which is the same way I work with Darkside. Really.
I hate to do this, but you brought something up earlier when you were talking about the magazine about Walking Dead, and I have to ask this question because I just want to know the answer. Do you have a preference between television shows, zombie shows, or zombie movies, or does it matter at all?
I don't think it really matters, but I think the weirdest thing about The Walking Dead, the first season is just the best, then after that, I think it varies. And when Negan came into it, it was great. I liked him.
Mm-hmm.
So it varied. We kind of interest dropped off from season 2, gave it a chance on season 3. It was okay, and then it started to pick up again. So they thought we might as well watch it. The weirdest thing though is that after you watch a TV show like that, you become quite inured to the gore. After a while, it's weird because if you went to see a film like Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, you go, "Oh my God, look at that, so gruesome." But after watching, like 6, 8, 9, 10, 11 seasons of Walking Dead, you just go, "Oh, well, it's just another head chopped off or chopped in half or something." It kind of like makes you think, "Oh, you're a bit blasé about it." There's just too much of it. You just go, that's the. But I do think, as I say, I mean, I've dipped into it from time to time, and sometimes it engages your interest. And it's kind of interesting. They have a lot of English actors when I was writing up there.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot. The Andrew Lincoln and Lenny James and David Morrissey, people like that have got some big roles in that. And you think that's kind of interesting. I like it, but I'm not. The trouble is sometimes you can recommend shows that you think are brilliant, and to my mind, Breaking Bad is still the best ever. But I've told people, and they go, "Oh yeah, but I can't sit and watch all those series of that. It's just too much." We love Game of Thrones as well, Where, and there was a great show called Lilyhammer with one of the guys who was in Sopranos. It's a brilliant show. We love that. So some of these series you go, yeah, you should watch that. You should watch that. And House of Dragons is not quite as good as Game of Thrones, has to be said, but it's all right. But and I quite like Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone, which was fun as well. But there's series you can recommend, and people tell me, like for example, I've never watched The Sopranos, but everyone says that's brilliant, so I should do. And we're talking the other day, someone was saying Dexter is really good as well. But there's so many shows that I've not seen Dexter, so you can. People go, you should watch that. You should, but then it's an investment in time. If you suddenly tomorrow, someone says somebody, you should watch The Walking Dead, you've got 11 seasons of that. I mean, really, seriously.
Yep.
I mean, are you really gonna sit down and watch 11 seasons of that? How many hours of your life is that going to take up? So I just think, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that if you're fine for it. And then forget that, you've got the spin-offs as well, like Fear the Walking Dead and all that sort of stuff. Although I kind of like, we watched that new one with Daryl Dixon in it, which I thought looked all right, but again, it will never end. I mean, you just got to, and who's got time to do that? And that is the problem. But yeah, horror. I mean, let's face it. I mean, when I first saw the first series of Walking Dead, I thought it's amazing for telly. I mean, not only was the effects amazing, but also just the budget and the money they spent on it. And that's the weird thing about today's world. You can see these movies. I'm just getting back from Fright Fest in London, seeing a lot of new films, and a lot of them were very low budget, but they still look good. Because people would shoot. I mean, back in my day, if people could not shoot movies on a phone or something like that, now you can do all sorts. So the quality of films has obviously improved. But obviously the key thing about doing a low budget movie is you probably can't afford actors, proper actors. So you end up using your friends, and it doesn't look that great a lot of the time if you don't use proper actors. But when it comes to these big budget things for the telly, most of the things, I mean, it must be tough to do an event like Fright. We show old films, we show classic old films. But doing an event that has new films all the time, it must be tough because anything that's really good will be snapped up by streaming services or go on release. So, for example, this year at Fright Fest, I was hoping that they would have this, what's it called? I don't know if you heard this one called In a Violent Nature, which is supposed to be good.
Yeah.
And
we did a review of it.
yeah, that's right. We did, and I was thinking that it would be nice if they could have put that on or something like that, but they didn't. They had two films we went to see. One was called Strange Darling, which was like a serial killer thriller, but told in a non-linear fashion, a bit Pulp Fiction-y, told in a weird way that kind of makes it a little bit more interesting than if it had just been told, A to B. And then the Substance with Demi Moore, which was really good, really, really, really good. Yeah, it's made by that girl who made that revenge film about the girl who gets stranded in the desert and these people try and kill her. That's a really good film. And I thought the Demi Moore one was fantastic, But I didn't see much else because nothing else much really piqued my interest. And I was reading reviews of them, and I thought, don't know. So it's tough. They are still being made, these films, but a lot of them just pop up on Amazon Prime or what have you, and so it's a tough market for new films getting out there. But it's great that people can make them on a low budget, and actually, and we have to do something sitting around waiting for Witches of the Sands to be. So that's
going to be the next big one.
Big one. It'll be showing. I've told Tony it's going to show at DarkFest, and he just sent me some clips the other day. It looks brilliant.
Yeah. Oh my gosh!
With animations and things, they're really funny. It's going to be amazing. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Awesome. I'm aware that we're a little bit over our hour, so we'll wrap it up. But I want to leave with a final, hopefully fun question for you, which is you've obviously met loads of amazing people in films that you love, but obviously there's probably been people who have passed away or that were long before your time that you wish you could have had a chance to interview. Do you have somebody that you really wish you could have, but it just won't be able to happen?
Well, I mean, it's quite easy, really. I really didn't meet any of the horror greats like Boris Karloff or Vincent Price or Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee. And I would have loved to have chatted to any of those, really. They were. I mean, probably Vincent Price mainly because I used to. I mean, he was my favourite, and I used to see him on TV. He was when I was growing up. he was on a lot of chat shows in the UK because, as you know, he was a bit of a raconteur, a cook, and he was jack of all trades, an art expert, and everything like that. So he'd get on there, and he would be. These were back in the days when there were shows like the Parkinson Show and all that, and they were. They're not like today's chat shows where people just go on there to talk about their latest film or their latest thing they want to flog. People went on there and they had grown-up conversations about stuff. And it was just funny stuff that they were talking about. And I think I remember thinking how clever and funny that Vincent Price was. So I think he would, of all my people I'd want to have interviewed, I'd love to have met Vincent Price. And I still think he's. Yeah, and I think one of my earliest great memories is seeing House on Haunted Hill. That still remains to me my favourite Vincent Price film because he's just having fun as the host of it all, and it's just him playing up to his persona. And to my mind, that's one of those films that I just find so cosy. I can watch again and again and again. Even once you know what the plot line is and all that, it's just great, to see it. I remember seeing. I must have seen it about 3 or 4 times at the cinema back in the day when it was going around. But yeah, Vincent Price would be the person I would love to have met.
One of my favorites too. That is a wonderful note to end on. Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time and such amazing stories. If anybody out there that's coming out in October hasn't got their little DarkFest badge yet, go get one. It's going to be so much fun.
It's going to be fun.
Great. And thank you so much again. We've had a lovely time.
Yes, thank you for your time. It was great talking to you, and look forward to hopefully meeting you at some point when I come over across the pond.
Oh, great meeting you too, and it's lovely that that you. I mean, it's fantastic. I enjoyed it a lot. So take care, and we'll see you again, definitely.
Thank you, and thank of course our listeners for listening. This has been the London Horror Movie Club.
If you want to share your thoughts about this episode, please head to our Facebook or YouTube pages. We're grateful to Kukurbit, who made our music. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time for the London Horror Movie Club.